the young ones who are fighting in urban situations are commanded to do that. And many are teenagers, most of them. An increasing amount are female as well. The Israeli Supreme Court said there should be no impediment to females fighting in the elite units of the Israeli army. Now, we're now going to talk to the father of one such soldier who made the supreme sacrifice. We're going to talk to the father of 21-year-old Sergeant Benjamin Meir Airley of the Paratroopers Brigade's 101st Battalion, and he was killed fighting in northern Gaza after entering a house occupied by Hamas. Sergeant Airley lived in Beit Shemesh, which is in the middle of the country. He was one of 6 children of Rob Airley and his wife Jen. Manchester-born Rob joins us on the show right now. Rob, welcome to Talk TV.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much for having me on.
Rob, my sincere condolences of your loss. There are simply no words to convey my sorrow at your loss. But I also wanted to, I think, use this as a tribute to your son, Benjamin, just 21 years old. And from all the reports, he was apparently an incredibly courageous and brave young man.
Yes, unfortunately, it's about 5 weeks ago already, and he was in Gaza near Al-Quds hospital, and there were 3 terrorists who ran into a home after shooting and injuring 7 Israeli soldiers, and my son and 2 other soldiers went into a house. They managed to kill 1 terrorist, but unfortunately there was a second one there who managed to kill all 3 of them. But he pushed forward to go into this house. I mean, there was a lot of soldiers around. He was the one that kind of pushed forward and said, "I'm going in. You can't go in without me." And interestingly enough, that one of the other soldiers that he was with, his name was Jamal Assad, who was not a very Jewish name, because he is a Druze, Muslim Druze, who've shared their lot with Israel, because they know themselves how disastrous it would be if they were living under a Palestinian state. So they serve. They're some of the best soldiers, and all there's 3 of them that day who perished, and including my son, and they were all extremely brave, just like all the Israeli soldiers. And I think this weekend, another 14 soldiers have died already. People are just waking up every morning to more and more soldiers being killed, because since Hamas started on October 7th. And my son really, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
No, I'm going to say, obviously it's a tremendous loss for us, and a lot of families are feeling this loss. I mean, Israel's a small country, and every soldier who's killed and every civilian, it's 1 or 2 degrees of separation, and so the whole country is really in mourning. But the morale here is absolutely incredible, and everybody is involved with the war effort. Those who are fighting, and those who are supporting the fight as well.
It's important to note, and I want to say this again, which is that Benjamin was, part of a generation who happened to be aged between 18 and 21, who is told to fight. It is expected of every young man and woman to serve. If you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, you don't have to fight. So those Muslim soldiers who give their lives alongside the Jewish Israeli soldiers, Muslim Israelis, are exceptionally brave people as well, for the simple reason that they don't have to fight, and some of them also have to break from their families who don't want them to fight too.
Right, so there are some Arab Muslims who join the army. There's the Druze community. As a community themselves, a lot of them have decided to serve in the army. The person that my son was killed with, I think his father and his grandfather all served with distinction in the Israeli army. So So they, like I say, they've thrown their lot in with us. But every day there's unfortunately soldiers being killed, and it's just crazy that we're being blamed by the legacy media, especially the Western media, and it's quite unbelievable that these soldiers are here literally just to protect Israeli lives, and like I said before, the morale is so high. My son, as you say, was he was a conscript. It's a conscript army, so he actually was in a program. It's called in Hebrew, it's a Hesder program, where he learns in a Talmudic yeshiva, Talmudic seminary for like a year and a half, and then he serves in the army. He was in the paratroopers. So he was in the army, and he was extremely happy to fight and protect. I mean, there was no question he wasn't going to go in. And this whole unit, we met up with him a few times right before they were going into Gaza, and the morale was exceedingly high. And there are people, I mean, unfortunately, this week was at a shiva house. I visited a person.
A house of mourning, we should say.
House of mourning, excuse me, yes, house of mourning. This person was 38 years old and married with 6 kids. He didn't have to go into Gaza because they wouldn't take him with 6 kids, but he and his wife decided it was important for him to go into Gaza. Unfortunately, he passed away. But it just shows you how strong the morale is in the country. I mean, also my brother-in-law's community, also a 41-year-old, I think he had 7 children, and he also volunteered to go into Gaza. He didn't have to. He was old enough and enough kids not to, but he did. Unfortunately, lost their lives. And the beginning of the war, soldiers were flying in from all over the world. Israelis coming back to serve. Even people who've left the country and emigrated to different countries are coming back. So it just shows how strong this nation is, and that gives us comfort. Obviously it's obviously been very difficult for us, but we have a shared destiny in this country. I'm from the UK, obviously Manchester originally, but we're so proud of my son, and we're so proud of all the other soldiers, and not just the soldiers. The whole country is almost volunteering and helping the war effort.
We're with Rob Airley, who is the father of Benjamin Meir Airley, who is an Israeli soldier who lost his life in this latest Gaza-Israel war. And we'll have more from Rob Airley here on Talk TV. My name's Jonny Gould. Good afternoon. We'll speak to him and with you on the phone with more in just a moment. And a warm welcome to your Christmas Eve. My name is Jonny Gould, and I'm here till 7 o'clock. And with me is Rob Airley. Rob Airley is a Manchester-born British Israeli who many years ago made the decision to move to Israel, brought up his children there, married Jen. They have 6 children, and tragically, he lost his 21-year-old son in this latest Israel-Hamas war, just 21 years old, Sergeant Benjamin Airley. Rob, welcome back after the break. Can you just tell us a little bit about Benjamin himself? And, he was told, wasn't he, by his commanding officer that, and it wasn't even his commanding officer, it was from another battalion apparently, that he shouldn't actually go into this building where he lost his life.
Yeah, I think it was a little sketchy at the moment because a lot of the soldiers are still been in Gaza. They're just coming out and telling us. But it was another group of soldiers that was kind of their responsibility. He was the machine gunner. So he had what's called the Negev. So they're always the first ones in. That was his job. And he said you can't go in there without him. You needed someone with a machine gun. And that's really, how he died, how he lived. He was always the first one in. He was the one that would motivate all the other soldiers in his unit. He was the one that would push them. And he himself, he had a really magnetic personality, and people really attracted to him. And he was able to have friends all different sectors of a very wide Israeli society, from religious people and non-religious, Arabs. He was able to develop relationships. He was incredible son with just gave us a lot of honor to his parents. He was very humble. He never spoke negatively of anybody. He really inspired a lot of people, and as stories of coming out when we were hearing, we had the House of Mourning, which is a week long, where people come from people coming from all over the country, and a lot of his friends and acquaintances were there and telling us stories, and so we learned a lot about him. And it was one of the advantages of having a mourning house, is you really get to learn more about him than we ever did, from different sectors of society.
Yeah.
But it's a great loss, not just obviously to our family, but for all of Israel. And yeah, it's been a difficult time, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. Rob, what was he going to do with his life? What were his talents? What was he studying? And had he finished his studies?
So he was in high school in yeshiva. He was in this yeshiva long program, so he hadn't even begun to kind of begin the rest of his life. He was committed to serving Israel and the Jewish people, even in his spare time. I mean, he actually volunteered on a farm, and he was many weekends he'd be herding cows, actually, which is quite unusual. And he would,
like those Montana cowboys that suddenly came over to Israel. Those guys with the big hats.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have the big hat, but he had the cows. So he would. So after a week of training hard in the army, and this is the paratroopers, the one on the higher unit. So constantly training. At the weekends, he would go onto the farm that he lived in, and he would have to spend 3-4 hours on a Saturday, Shabbat, walking the cows. And then he would have to wake up in the middle of the night, because these farms were in quite a Arab area, actually. There's a lot of Arab villages. In fact, we went there last week to visit his friends on the farm, and right next to it was a village which they said were big Hamas supporters. So he would go out there. He would have to do guard duty in the evening. So this is on his day off. He would have to wake up at 2 in the morning to do guard duty for a couple of hours, because unfortunately a lot of Arab terrorists are in that area. And we heard a lot of stories of where he was set upon by Arabs, and but he was unnaturally brave, yes. Incredibly brave, and it didn't faze him. He would go out even before the army without any weapons and people, and he would do anything for Israel. I mean, he was literally on call 24/7, which was unusual. Most kids today, most teenagers, soldiers, they want to go home and just relax and rest, and he was on duty.
Now, he's one of your 6 children, you and your wife Jen, who's, I think, from the United States. She's from Florida. Have you got other children serving in the IDF?
So I have, my next son is also in a similar program. It's called like I mentioned before, yes. Hesda, where he's now in a Talmudic seminary, yeshiva. And he wants also to go into the paratroopers, which I'm sure my parents are listening now. They're probably fainting at this moment to hear this. But he wants to. It's a difficult decision. How it works in Israel is that if the parents lose a child, then we have to sign him off to be in a combat unit. So we have a little while yet to make that decision. My next son also, we went to the same school. He's very similar to Binyamin. Mm-hmm. So he also wants to serve in a combat unit, very high unit as well.
And how does that make you feel? Like when they're going to serve.
Yeah. So
what does this do to you, Rob? What does this do to your wife Jen?
I think she has she's a stronger personality than I am. So I mean, I have sleepless nights,
Yes.
probably.
Yes.
Nothing's yet been decided whether he's going to be in a combat unit or not. My vote is no, but he wants to, and my wife is happy for him to do it. It's just a contribution that everyone has to make. I mean, I was just actually last night I was just talking to a friend of my daughter's, and he was in Gaza firefight about a week, 10 days ago, and his wife was in labor, and they pulled him out of Gaza to attend his wife's the wife's birth of their child. They just thank God they had a very healthy boy, but he was literally pulled out of Gaza to attend the birth. And now he has a question: is he going to go back or not? His soldiers in the unit want him to go back, and he's got a wife now that's just had a baby, and I think he's going to go back. He actually said there was 10 other guys in his unit that had babies within the last 3 months.
Wow. And
they've all gone back into Gaza. So we have a tremendous responsibility. There's unfortunately, the Hamas, they're not going anywhere. The Palestinians obviously do not want peace. So until there is a safer Israel, we're going to have to keep sending our kids to the army.
In every generation, as the Jewish proverb says. Rob, you grew up in Manchester, and in 1999 you made the decision to go and live in Israel. 25 years later.
But it was a little later. I actually came to Israel via the United States. I lived in New York.
Okay.
From 1999 to 2006. I've been in Israel since 2006. I apologize. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, you had the choice with your wife to set up a home in Manchester or New York, perhaps even in Florida, knowing what has happened to your boy and the prospect of your other children serving in a similar fashion. Would you live your life in a different way again, or is having moved to Israel as a Jewish person, as a young person, and making your life there the destiny that you always wanted? It was a price that you were willing to pay.
Well, when we moved to Israel, our kids were very young, so it just wasn't even on the radar that we're going to have kids who are going to be serving in the army. You just don't think about that when your kids are 4 years old and 2 years old. But we don't regret coming to Israel. I mean, we feel that this is the right place for us and for Jews, even though we're very comfortable in the US and very comfortable in England, and other Jews are. We feel that this is a place where we should be living, and however difficult it is, we don't regret coming here in the slightest. We have a very happy life here of kids. My daughter got married last year, so she's had a baby. She's, we've developed a wonderful life here in a fantastic community. So we certainly don't have any regrets. When I said, when the eulogies I gave my son, we're obviously pained tremendously, but at the same time, there's a sense of pride. He could have gone with an illness. If he lives in the US, he could have been in a car accident, could have got knocked down by a bus. Who knows? It was his time to go, and at least he went how he would want to go. I mean, if he was here now, 100 times over, he would say he would do exactly the same.
These are very profound answers, and I thank you for coming on and talking to our audience in such a frank way. Can I talk about the wider consequences of this? Of course, there are two objectives here. There is the objective to destroy Hamas, who have insisted that they would do October the 7th again and again and again, so they must be destroyed. And that is the very much 100% view, I would hope, 99% view. Maybe there's a few people in Israel who don't agree, but most of them, almost everyone, agrees that Hamas must be destroyed. But there is also the prospect of attempting to bring 120, 130 hostages out of Gazan hell. Rob, can I just have your views on the state of the war, on the destruction of Hamas, how united the country is in their destruction, the will to destroy them, and given the tragedy of the IDF accidentally killing 3 hostages last week, the danger of this going on without some kind of resolution, without a pause in the fighting, because of the expediency to keep the war on the front foot?
So I certainly don't envy the politicians who have to make these decisions. It's terrible decisions to make. On the one hand, these hostages are kidnapped by Hamas, and we're just hearing reports of many of them being sexually abused whilst in captivity and not receiving medical treatment. And even the Red Cross refused to visit the Israeli hostages. This international organization that should be protecting them is refusing to deliver medicines, refusing to visit them. On the other hand, a number of years ago, Gilad Shalit was Israeli soldier that was kidnapped by the Hamas, and he was traded in for 1,000 Palestinian terrorists. And a lot of the senior terrorists were released, and they're the ones who planned and plotted this October 7th massacre. So if it wasn't for that release, I wouldn't be here now. My son would still be with us. So it's a very difficult situation. But what doesn't get a lot of press, there are actually a number of families of hostages who are against ceasefire, that their kids are in Gaza now, again, mistreated, and they do not want their kids to be traded for Palestinian terrorists with blood on their hands, and they're against the ceasefire. They want to continue. And these parents love their kids just as much as the other parents who want a ceasefire and want their kids to be traded with Palestinians. And it's above my pay grade, as they say, but I just know my son would continue until the last Palestinian terrorist or would be killed or captured. He would just continue and continue. And I think most of the soldiers are just have a bit in their teeth. They want to just go in there and protect, because they know if we don't do the job, there's going to be another October 7th and then another one. And maybe instead of 1,200 being killed, it could be 10,000, God forbid. Mm-hmm. And it will embolden Hezbollah. Hezbollah are in the north, they're attacking us, and they're just also waiting for us to show weakness, and they will also attempt to do the same thing. We're living in an extremely dangerous neighborhood. This is not, a lot of people in England and Europe, they don't understand the mentality of many of the Palestinians. I mean, they've had recent polls. It's absolutely mind-boggling, but 80% of Palestinians support the October 7th massacre of murder, rapes, killing innocent babies, burning them, 80%. So the question, how can you have peace with a nation that is so overwhelmingly in favor of destroying the Jewish people? I mean, they've been literally nursed, breastfed on hatred of Jews. They've been indoctrinated by through education. So they've had, since the Oslo Accords 30 years ago, they could have changed their whole education system and talked about coexisting and having peace with Israel. And instead, they use that time to incite against us. They use that time to plot and plan further attacks. So how do we have peace with them? The only way we can do it in this neighborhood is to go in there and root out the terror and try and bring in, I don't know, maybe perhaps the Saudis will move in, or the Egyptians, or somebody, or maybe the UN, but somebody. If we give it back to the Palestinians, it's just going to happen all over again.
Indeed. I have one more question for you, Rob, and then we're going to wish you every success and happiness with your children for the future. I have one more question, which relates to the displacement of Israelis, which is something that is also not really reported in Western media, there might be up to 200,000, maybe more Israelis who've been forced to leave their homes in the north and the south to move into temporary accommodation in cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. But it is important, isn't it, that they return particularly to the south, to the Gazan border, where many are farmers, for example. Food security is a vital part of Israeli society. Where are the farmers if they're not at home growing the tomatoes and the oranges? The food basket of the nation is currently made redundant. And of course, the political consequence of this, which is that the jihadists mustn't rule where the Jewish people should live in the Jewish state as well. Do you agree, Rob, with generally the Israeli population, generally, that the people of the south and north should be able to return from whence they came?
Yeah, of course. They're literally refugees in their own country. And thousands of Jews from the south and the north have been unable to return to their homes because of the threat of rockets. They say, we're not, until everything's safe, we're not coming back to our homes. So they're being hosted by people, by hotels, and also people in their homes and apartments. We actually, at the beginning of the war, we hosted a family of 5 children and parents for I think 3 weeks at the beginning of the war in our basement before they were able to find some other accommodation. People are scared to go back. There's and unfortunately, I think this war is going to continue until the last Israeli can be back in their homes in Sderot in the south or in the north next to the Lebanon border. And until that happens, this is just going to continue. Hopefully, and especially in the north, there'll be a diplomatic agreement where Hezbollah will fully abide by United Nations agreements, which they were supposed to abide to, which they haven't. But if not, I mean, I think Israel is going to be prepared to attack Hezbollah. There's no way that Israel would not want their citizens to live in their own homes. Can you imagine in London? I mean, if you just imagine if this was in London where we're being attacked by terrorists from, I don't know, northern France, they would go in and they would no holds barred. It would cause tremendous amount of destruction. Israel has treated the Palestinian citizens better than Hamas treats their own citizens. Hamas, they shoot and they fire rockets from civilian areas. They have no care and concern. All the money that was given to Hamas to build a city that could be like Dubai, Singapore, they used it to build underground tunnels and missiles. They didn't spend it on their citizens. They didn't spend it on health and education and jobs. They just spent it so they could help destroy Israel and Israeli society. And until we get those refugees back, I'm afraid this is going to have to carry on.
Bring them home now. Rob Airley, my sincere condolences to you and the family on the loss of your 21-year-old soldier son, Benjamin Meir Airley.